In a land torn by conflict, it is possible to see several dead men lying on the ground, after which, a giant monster appears, and although several warriors were already dead, there were still some willing to continue the fight. In this the creature disdains them, calling them fools, and says that mere mortals like them will never be able to defeat him, and well, it is explained to us that the worst calamity that humanity has ever faced is called dark worlds. Because the world of humans is about to be enveloped in a black fog, and to make matters worse, they are not able to know what is going on inside that fog. The only information they have is that no living creature is capable of surviving in a land contaminated by this mist. And as humanity is unable to understand it, the only option left is to take over the shadow worlds before this chaos spreads, and then the scene returns to Desir, and he shouts to Boromir Napolitan that they will solve that problem once and for all. In other words, he is swearing to kill the monster, to put an end to all that chaos, and upon hearing these words of affront, Boromir becomes enraged and positions himself for combat. And then Zod warns about the attack they were about to suffer from the monster, so everyone prepares their defenses and uses their magic to stop the attack, leaving Boromir without understanding anything. Then he starts to charge another attack, but in return Desir is preparing his magic too, and so he manages to stop another attack from the beast, and says that he managed to finish his magical pattern analysis successfully. And so, Desir sealed all the draconian spells, and then his companions thanked him for the help and went on the attack, at which Boromir became enraged, calling humans miserable. And then when they were close to him, Boromir tries to attack them, but the shield warrior contains the attack. Meanwhile, the other allies take advantage of Boromir's carelessness to hit him. So finally, Zod finishes conjuring the mass magic of all his companions, and throws it to the girl allied with them, whereupon she hits the monster with her sword, defeating it. And after the duel, the sky becomes more alive again, and the allies celebrate the victory, and Desir breathes a sigh of relief, because they have finally freed themselves from that hell from before. And then one of the companions complains that the message from Limpo is taking too long, and he wonders if they missed the target, but Zod says no, they really had to defeat Boromir Napolitan. However, the shield warrior finds it strange that they are still there. After all, it was normal for them to be sent to their world, and Desir says that they should wait a little longer, as everything had ended a short time ago. So Zod agrees with him, and says that of the 150 million people who challenged Boromir, only the 6 of them survived, and for him that is something difficult to believe. Then Desir says that they really were the only survivors of the monster, and says that that world took the lives of many people, and memories of his friends come to his mind, where he sees them already defeated and with no hope of survival. But Priscilla tries to lift their spirits, saying that now they had finally defeated Boromir Napolitan, as they wanted so much, but Zod tells her not to look away from reality. After all, 99% of the magicians died in that fight. And then he says it's important for them to think about what's yet to come, and she says that before that they should pray, and seeing the discord, Desir asks them to calm down a little, because they just saved the world, so don't they should fight. The princess then recovers herself, and praises Raffaello for his excellent performance in blocking Boromir's attacks, and says that this is what is expected from a Knight of Light. But he humbly says that's not the point, as he thinks that the person who contributed most to the victory was Desir, and the other friends say that he's right, and that if it weren't for Desir, they wouldn't have won the fight. Then he says it was no big deal, and Zod confesses that he didn't expect Desir to survive the fight even though he had the protection artifact to analyze and seal Boromir's spells with his rank. Because for him, Desir was still a total unknown, even if he had such power that not even Zod himself has, and so he questions why he is like that, and Priscilla says she also wants to know. Then Desir says it's because he's a commoner, and Zod laments, saying that if he had been in the magic tower, he could have given him all the support he needed. And well, Raffaello changes the subject, and asks what they will do when they return to their world, and one of them responds that he will go back to visit the relatives of his dead friends, to return their belongings to the family. As for Priscilla, she says that she will return to the League of Western Kingdoms, to take care of the families of the victims. In addition, she confesses that she wants to build a memorial and a temple for the spirits of those who died there. And Zod says that they must prevent the Dark Worlds from happening again, because if another one similar to that one appears, they could end up becoming extinct, and Raffaello questions what Azest will do when he returns to his world. However, he remains silent, so Raffaello asks Desir the same question, and also asks if they will return to the Hebrian Institute, and Desir starts to speak, but ends up having a memory of a girl, where she talked about a vacation home they had, and she talked about how beautiful the color of the sea was when the sun came up. And after that, another memory of her appears, where she was already fainting in his arms, and regretting that she was about to leave, and then, Desir replies to Raffaello that he will still think about what he will do when he returns to his world. Well, a new attack on the group happens, and yes, it was Boromir Napolitan himself. He was still alive, and Zod questions this possibility. After all, he was completely sure that the monster was dead. But when he stops to reflect, he remembers the dragon's heart, and Priscilla questions whether he knows anything important about it. So Zod tells him that he read about the dragon's heart in an ancient document. And he explains that they can store not only blood, but also an incredible amount of mana, and with that he can make this mana circulate in his body. And when the dragon dies, the blood stops, but all the mana accumulated in the heart has nowhere to go, and upon hearing this, the others question whether it would explode. And Priscilla is terrified, while Raffaello regrets that they didn't realize this sooner, but Zod explains that this is the first time in history that humans have defeated a dragon. And well, it activates a protective barrier towards them, and is amazed at the amount of magical power that was stored in the dragon. Desir tries to use his magic to stop it, but is unsuccessful in his attack. Then Zod explains that trying is useless, as that was a block of pure magical power, so his basic spells won't work now, and he states that the best thing for them is to prepare for the worst. And then they begin to be swallowed by Boromir's power, and Desir wonders if things would really end there, and memories of that girl appear in his mind. And after all that, he finds himself in an apparently calm and silent place, and then looking at his hands, he notices that he is alive when he wasn't supposed to be. Then he starts to hear sounds of clapping. And Bridget takes the stage, welcoming the new students to the Hebrean Institute, and from the audience a group of girls praised the beautiful appearance of their future teacher, but she tells them to stop their side conversations. And then Desir comes close, and recognizes Professor Bridget, and she continues her speech, saying that some students will not be able to enter the institute, even if they have come from very far away, because they will take a test, and only the 600 best students will be able to enroll in Hebrean. So those girls in the audience are already a little apprehensive. And well, before the teacher revealed what the test would be, Desir already knew what she was going to say. In this case, the test is to clean up a dark world, and some students in the audience are already complaining, saying it is something impossible to do. And then Desir is scared by the test that was proposed, and Bridget explains that that dark world was created for testing purposes, and upon hearing this, Desir wonders what is happening. Well, the teacher says that they will receive the details of the task from their superiors. In addition, they will help them in the process, and the teacher says that they are about to start the entrance exam for year 3613. Then Desir goes to another corner to take some air, and reflect on all those bombs he discovered regarding the Hebrean Institute's entrance ceremony. He remembers that the battle fought against Boromir Napolitan began in the year 3616, that is, 3 years ahead of the year in which he is living, and during those next 10 years, he and his friends fought in that dungeon, until everything ended up destroyed. So with these things in mind, he laments, as he believes that their fight and the deaths of his friends were in vain. Well, the next day he looks at the sky and realizes that it really wasn't a dream, because he clearly remembers that landscape around him. And while he is reflecting alone, a girl appears to talk to him, and asks if he would be Desir Herman. He then stands up, and she introduces herself as Ladoria Doriche, and says that she is a second-year student, in addition to being the year mentor too. He then starts to analyze her, and remembers that she is a prodigy mage who uses fire magic, and he also remembers that she ranked first in the ranking of Hebrean's best talents. She then notices that Desir is looking much to her, and asks what's going on, but he ignores it and says he's just a little tense, and she says that if it's because of the test, he doesn't need to be scared, because he'll fight the dark world just by test. In this case, they will just check which of the students can fight. Well, she notes in Desir's data that he is a commoner, but he says that this is not a problem for his enrollment. And she says that there really isn't, but if he passes the test, he will go to the beta class, and he remembers that the school discriminates and segregates nobles in the elf class, while commoners go to the beta class. Therefore, even if the student has talent, he will not be able to enjoy a proper education if he is a commoner, and Desir remembers that it was this discrimination that overshadowed the talents of many magicians. Well, the two go to the main entrance of the institution, and Ladoria uses her identification pass to open the door, and when she looks at Desir's face, the girl finds it strange that he wasn't surprised by the place. So he makes the excuse that he's seen a building like that before, but she catches him lying, and says that there's hardly a facility like that anywhere else. Well, but the conversation ends up being for another time, as Ladoria states that they should hurry to avoid being late, but on the way the two are stopped by an unknown guy. And Desir asks her if she knows him, so the girl replies that that guy is a boar called Elhim, and analyzing the guy further, Desir believes that he would be a wizard who uses water magic. And he starts to remember that that man didn't get along with Ladoria, so Desir asks if she doesn't like him, and she replies that not liking is an understatement, she actually hates him. And well, he teases her, saying that she is late because her legs are too short to get there faster, and Ladoria calls him uneducated, so Elhim responds to the insult by calling her a despicable fire mage. But she was sharp that day, and reminds him of having lost a fight to that despicable magician, so he gives the excuse that he let her win, and when he finishes arguing with Ladoria, Elhim asks if Desir is accompanying her. And he politely answers yes, and introduces himself, so the guy goes after his data, and upon discovering that Desir is a commoner, he mocks him, and says that Ladoria would really have to hang out with inferior people like that. And well, he tells them to wait anxiously for the test, and heads towards them, whereupon he turns his attention to Desir, and explains that even if he passes the test, he will fall into the beta class, so he advises him not to even participate. And while he leaves, Ladoria keeps mumbling in the back, asking him to tell them what they should expect, and then the bell rings, and announces that the entrance exam will start soon, so the candidates must go to the test location. Then Desir calls Ladoria to go, but when he looks at her, the girl appears to be furious, and she asks him to pass that test no matter what, and he says he will do his best to do so. And so they continue on their way, and Desir returns to reflect on his situation, realizing that he has in fact returned to the past, as he is experiencing moments and seeing people that he has seen before. And well, since he's in the past, the guy starts to wonder if the little girl from before is really alive, until suddenly Desir hears her voice, and when he looks back, he recognizes the little girl called Romantica, the same one girl who died in his arms in the future. And then he says he doesn't know why this is happening. However, Desir swears that he will not allow that future tragedy to happen again, and then he will rewrite the history of that world with his own hands. When looking at Romantica, Desir almost he says that she is safe, but he remembers that he went back in time, and then remains quiet, so as not to raise suspicions, and the girl questions how he knows her name, and asks if he has seen him before. At this he apologizes, and says that he saw her name on the panel, and upon seeing it, she notices that they are both in the same testing group, and Romantica wishes him good luck and walks away, to which he responds to her mentally, saying that he does know her, and that he was very devastated the day he lost her. So he promises himself that he will never let her go through all that suffering again, and well, Ladoria goes to Desir and tells him that he is in Group D, and says that the content of the test is to run a race in the plains. Iransti in the Dark World level. And then she asks him not to worry about it, as it is not something dangerous, even though it is a dark world, and she explains that the dark worlds used at the Hebrean Institute are created for testing purposes, and they employ a security system, so even if any student receives a fatal damage, he can leave the dark world immediately. They are interrupted by Elhim, and he explains that in that world the use of magic and attacks against other participants is allowed. In addition, he warns the two that it will be impossible for them to pass the test, but Ladoria says that he cannot have that much. Sure, after all they didn't even try to do the test. And Elhim says he doesn't need to see them in action, as he knows they won't pass anyway, and well, he introduces his pupil to them, the Azest King's Crown, and says that she is a magical knight, and upon hearing this description, Ladoria is amazed, and Desir remembers the girl, and reflects on knowing her very well. Then memories take over his mind, and he remembers that she is a magical ice knight and a mage of the high circle, and she can wield vision magic, which is impossible to reverse. Plus, Desir remembers that she's better at swordsmanship than most knights, so she'll be your most reliable teammate, and well, she looks at him without much expression, and Desir notices that the girl remains silent as always. And upon noticing Ladoria's look of despair, Elhim laughs at her, and says that the girl's excitement went down the drain very suddenly, and she says that he was lucky to have a good pupil and nothing else. After all, he can't guarantee himself with your own skills. However, he gives the excuse that a zest represents his personal virtue, and says that Ladoria should be content with continuing with her commoner as a pupil. After all, he is someone perfect for her level, and so he turns his back on the two and keeps making fun of her face. And even with all the insults, Desir was just keeping an eye on Azest, and feels that it was very good to have seen her again, and well, Ladoria tells him that his chances are low competing against a magical knight, but she asks him to he still doesn't give up, so they are told that they will start testing for Group D, and they are told to gather at the gate. And then Desir says he's going, and Ladoria says that he must be firm in the test. Then a portal opens in front of the participants, and they begin to walk towards it, and as they enter the place, a voice warns that they are on the Iransti plain, in the dark world, and she explains that they must reach the finish line that is in front of them, and it says that only the first 3 will pass the test. And the mentor also explains that they are allowed to use magical attacks, interference, and any method they deem convenient. In addition, she says that if anyone there receives any fatal damage, that person will be disqualified immediately. And well, they line up, and Desir remembers that Azest also survived the trials to the end, just like him, and then she wonders if she too had returned to that world with past memories, and just like in the past, he still hasn't have any idea what she's thinking. And when he looks at her a lot, the girl ends up realizing this, and calls him by his name, and then he asks her how she knows his name, and she says she just checked the list before going to the audition, and she says he is in the lowest circle and has below average physical abilities, so even if he continues training, she doesn't see a future in him. And upon hearing this, he believes that she certainly has no past memories, and well, she comments to Desir that she noticed that he doesn't stop watching her, and says that he doesn't need to be cautious when doing so, as she has no interest in attacking the weakest. He then just thanks Azest and returns to position himself in line. Then the mentor says that the race across the Iransti plain will start right now, and then a countdown begins. And when they reach the end, everyone runs, leaving Romantica and Desir behind in the dust, and while they try to keep up with the people, the girl ends up stepping on an animal that was there, and feels bad about it as she thought the animal was very cute. Then Desir comments that she hasn't changed at all as she still likes this kind of thing, and then Romantica asks what he means by continues, especially since they haven't even met yet, and she also asks what he knows about her. Then he remains silent, and she questions whether he is flirting with her, and says that they should stay in the race, and then Desir says that she is right. After all, if they continue at this pace they will both be disqualified, but Romantica tells him not to compare himself to her, and says that he shouldn't say things as if he knew her. And he just smiles and apologizes, but the girl says that his expression irritates her, and Desir says he can't resist, because he missed doing that, and well, a ball of fire starts heading towards him. Romantica, and he saves her, pushing her out of attack range. Then the guy who launched the attack gets angry, and says he will finish him first, as Desir interfered in his attack, but Romantica counterattacks the boy's magic with Wind Blow, and throws him away. And then the mentor warns that Sing Eggs was disqualified, due to the fatal attack he received from Romantica, and with that there are only 5 participants left, and the girl says that she owes one to Desir for saving her, but she says that after save him once they will be even. And he says positively with his head, making her angry again, and well, he questions if she didn't intend to increase her speed, as all the other participants are far ahead of them. She says that she will use a skill she was saving. In this case it would be the Arrow Sweep spell, and while therefore, the test organizers comment that Groups A and C have finished testing now, while Groups D and F are still undergoing testing, but everything is going well. And one of the women organizers comments that the students of that year are very promising, and the organizer next to her says that they have a magic night that year, so they really are very talented, but a lady comments that there is a commoner in Group D. At this everyone laughs, and says that he was unlucky to fall into the same group as the magic knight. But a red-haired woman looks intently at Desir, and returning to the test, the 2 competitors behind Azest try to keep up with her, and the student who is secondly. He looks at the boy coming right behind him and feels like he can keep him at bay. However, they are suddenly surprised by an explosion of wind, but the student sticks his sword in the ground and says that this will not be enough to stop him, so the magical knight begins to cut the wind with her sword, but still so the student is hit by a tree, and the mentor explains that Travairai Tychus and Nasi Home were disqualified due to fatal injuries, leaving only 3 participants left. And Romantica says that with that they have already passed the test. After all there are only 3 of them now, but she soon reveals that these are not the words she will direct at him. In this case, her real objective is to destroy him too, and she tell him to give up while he can. Then he makes that same face that she doesn't like, and asks her why she wants to destroy him, and Romantica responds that his expression is the reason she hates him, and Desir asks if she wasn't being too hard on him, and she says no. After all, if she eliminates him now, Desir won't run the risk of getting hurt in the next tests. And then she points her magic at him, and tells him to give up, but he refuses to do so, and Romantica reminds him of the destructive power that her magic possesses, but Desir just laughs at her, and the girl says that she gave a chance for him, but it won't happen again. He is impressed by all that magic, and Romantica warns him that Desir will feel horrible pain, but the girl explains that he will not die, as that dark world is programmed in such a way that it is not possible to kill the students, and so she attacks him, and turns away, thinking he had been defeated. However, he was still there, and says that she is truly incredible for being able to control so much magic, but Desir notices that she prioritizes speed a lot, and this leaves her control very weak, and then he explains that all it takes is a small adjustment to the trajectory of the attack and he will no longer suffer her blow. And upon hearing this, Romantica says that she just got careless with the attack, and says that he is still no match for her, and then the girl prepares the same attack but promises that this time she won't miss, so she attacks him with his poison wind magic, but he says that the blow remains the same, so he just needs to change the direction of the air currents a little. And in doing so, he again disperses Romantica's attack, and the girl notices that what he did is an inversion spell, and says that usually to be able to do this, the person has to be in a much higher circle to being able to reverse your enemy's spell. But she shouts at him and says that it is impossible for Desir to be able to reverse her spell, after all he is in a much lower circle. So she tries to attack him again, and Desir once again disperses the girl's attack with the spell reversal. And then the girl is impressed by this is because if he can reverse her spells, it means that he has abilities far superior to hers. And well, he says that they must end it, after all Desir has other opponents that he needs to defeat, and that's why he couldn't stay there playing with her, so Romantica tries to attack him with several different spells at the same time, but he manages to end it with all the attacks, but even though she is weak to him, Desir notes that Romantica is certainly one of the best students among the new students that year. But still, her abilities are not enough, and this will only make her repeat the future where she dies because she is weak, and Desir claims that she has the potential to be much stronger than that, and that's why he wants to break her ego by defeating her. So the girl will try to train more, and in this she breaks all her magic, and says that she let some things go unnoticed. The first is that he can't just reverse spells, and then he uses the grease magic. And Romantica recognizes it as a basic spell to eliminate friction, and she questions him why he would use it, but he ignores her, and says that the second thing she forgot is that it's not her he's been fighting since the beginning, and the third thing is that their test is not a contest of magic, its focus is on reaching the finish line. And well, as they don't die when they take fatal damage, Desir starts to cast very strong fire magic, and the girl asks him to stop. After all, she will still suffer the pain of the blow, even if she doesn't die, but he gives her attacks in the same way, and meanwhile, a zest begins to visualize the finish line and soon notices Desir's presence there too. Then the magical knight stands in front of him, and says that because he has defeated Romantica, she will no longer consider him a weakling, so she will attack him with everything she has, but Desir is not intimidated by this and continues going up, and then she prepares the praise magic arrows attack. And he analyzes each spell linked by her, in which Desir manages to gain control over the magical arrows of prey and reverses her spell. But Azest says that he will end his spell before he can end all his magic. But upon receiving the blows, Desir manages to dodge them all, and now Azest understands how he would have defeated Romantica, in which case he would have reversed her spells, and then she prepares to attack again, and says that this time she won't have time to he reverses his spell. Then Desir says that her attack was a good choice, but it's still not enough to defeat him, as he gets away with the blow by changing direction, and then he goes to her, and comments that the girl is very obsessed. In defeating him, he takes the lead and crosses the finish line first, and after that, he turns his gaze to Romantica and Azest, and thinks to himself that they must become stronger, to avoid the approaching tragedy. The test organizers meet to talk about the tests, and one of them explains that they assign classes based on some elements, which would be test results, magic circles and family stories. And one of them comments that there is not a single commoner assigned to the Alpha class, just as he expected. After all, the Alpha class exists to train chosen wizards, therefore there is no room for commoners in this class. Another instructor says that the commoners should be content with being able to enroll at the Hebrean Institute, as this is already too much of a privilege for them, at which point they start to laugh loudly, and the gentleman who commanded the meeting tells them to remain silent. And he says that the distribution of classes was completed, but there was an indication that a certain student be placed in the alpha class, and then teacher Bridget points to the image of Desir Herman, and says that he should be placed in the alpha class. And well, Desir goes to check the test results, and notices that he is in the beta class, but he says he is only worried about Romantica, so the girl checks the results of her test and is astonished by what she sees. And upon returning to the classroom, the girl begins to notice that environment, and how it is all deteriorated, and Romantica regrets having to study in such a boring place. And well, the teacher explains that the abilities of magicians are classified by circles, and the lowest circle would be number 1, while the highest is number 7, and he says that to be in the alpha class, the student needs to be at least except in circle 2, but everyone in that room is only in circle 1. And because of this, their skills probably won't be able to protect them in a real dark world. So the teacher asks them to try their best and do their best, but when she sees him laughing, Romantica gets angry, but starts reflecting on the results of his test, and regrets it again, saying that being in the beta class is terrible. However, when she sees Desir sitting next to her, she becomes even more indignant, as he defeated her in combat. And in addition, Romantica finds it strange that he is in the same class as her. After all, he defeated the magical knight, and that should make him an alpha class student. And well, he notices her looking at him and smiles, but Romantica doesn't take it kindly and gets angry with him again. So she starts punching the table, and the professor is completely shocked, but he tells her that everything is fine there. In this, Desir remembers a dialogue he had with teacher Bridget, where he thanks her for helping him while he was at the orphanage, and she says she is happy that he has become an excellent wizard. In addition, Bridget expresses her surprise that he was able to defeat a Zest, and says that no one expected him to be able to do that. And because he is very strong, Bridget says that she would like to be able to put him in the alpha class, but the teachers were against the idea, due to prejudice due to him being a commoner, and so she apologizes to him. And Desir understands that the cause of all this is the barrier between the nobility and their commoner social class. However, Desir says that their obsession with status will be their ruin. After all, there are many talents in that beta class, in that he has the idea of awakening new talents on your own, and as much as possible. Well, after class, Romantica isolates herself from everyone, and remains disappointed to be in the beta class, and then an unknown man appears and asks her if Romantica would be Baron Eru's daughter, to which the girl replies yes and asks who he is. It is. And the man introduces himself as Donetta Hadun, and says he is a student of the alpha class, in which he explains that he is looking for people to join his group, and Romantica wants him to find good members. And then he says that's why he's there talking to her, and tells her that he's going to join the Blue Moon group, which would be the best group in Hebrian, made up of the best students from the alpha class. And after all this explanation, he tells her invites her to be part of this group too, because she saw that she has excellent skills, and is from a perfect lineage. Therefore, she imagines that if she joins this group, she could be promoted to the alpha class, and therefore her answer would be yes. But Romantica feels that there are reasons for her not to join this group too. But before she can give her final answer, he takes Romantica's hands, and says that he has one condition: to accept her into his group, in which case she would have to date him. But upon hearing this, the girl turns red and moves away from him, as she thinks he is traveling a little. However, Hadun says he is serious, and Romantica explains that they have just met, in which he says that when he saw her at the entrance ceremony, he fell in love with her at first sight, and Hadun says that a noble woman like her should never have been placed in the beta class, along with filthy commoners. And then he calls her back to his group, but she asks for time to think, and before leaving he gives the girl a Kemuvan, and explains that in his hometown it is common to give a gift to a loved one. So she takes the present and he asks Romantica to open it. And when she opens the gift, she comes across a gold accessory, and Hadun says that this is proof of his sincerity with her, and then he says goodbye, and says he is waiting for a favorable response from her, but Romantica continues confused and indecisive. Then Desir appears behind her and praises the gift she received, but the girl gets scared and falls to the ground right away, and upon seeing this he says that she had a good reaction to his arrival. But Romantica fights with him, and tell Desir not to appear out of nowhere. And well, she gets up and questions what he wants, and Desir says that he wants to make her the same proposal that Hadun made, and upon hearing this Romantica disdains him, and says that she would never stay with Desir, but he says that the proposal doesn't have that content. In this case he just wanted to form a group with her. However, Romantica says that this is even more unthinkable, as Hadun's proposal is much more tempting than his. After all, the Blue Moon group only contains students from the Alpha class in its composition, so there she would be guaranteed success, unlike a group new created by a Beta class student. And then Desir returns to reflect on the future, and notices that her way of thinking led to her biggest mistake, and well, after listening to him, Romantica tells Desir to get lost, as she no longer has anything to talk to him about. In this he sees no way out, and gives the girl a piece of paper, but he explains that she can only read the letter when no one is around. And then she takes the letter and starts making fun of him because she thinks that Desir must have written a lot of nonsense, so he goes to Romantica and asks her to get rid of that paper after reading what's there, and says that this is for her own good. And after giving all the explanations, he goes on his way and says that he will be waiting for her answer. And then the girl reads the letter trembling and is scared by something he had written, and meanwhile Desir is wondering what her reaction upon reading his letter, and he bets that Romantica will certainly be angry with him. And well, Desir continues on his way, until he finds a boy sitting on a bench, and he introduces the boy as Pram Schneezer, and says that he was the fastest swordsman who participated in that great battle of the future. And then Desir is impressed by him because the boy was very strong, even without having received much training during these years, and with that in mind, Desir notices that Pram has great potential to become an even stronger swordsman. And well, Romantica runs to him, and asks Desir about something that was in the letter, where he demonstrated that he had discovered something important, but Desir asks her to be silent, as the training was about to begin. And as she looks at the arena, she sees Pram warming up for training, and then Romantica starts to melt over the young man, saying that he's really cute, and Desir says that Pram is actually kind of cute, but Romantica counters that, and says that he's not just, kinda, he's cuteness personified. And well, Pram wields one of the swords on the table, and Desir doesn't understand why he picked up a big sword, so Romantica wonders if the boy could wield a weapon that size. And then he goes to the center of the arena and introduces himself as a student from the Beta class. As for his opponent, he says he will not announce his name, as he is fighting against a simple Beta, and for the boy he would not be worthy, not even knowing your name. Then the judge lowers the flag, signaling that the fight could begin, and then Pram goes on the attack, and the boy immediately feels that he is a different Beta, and after several blows, Romantica says that the boy is very strong, but Desir says no, and explains that Pram is just blindly striking. And well, the opponent starts to come at Pram with more fury, and Desir anticipates in his mind what Pram's next attack will be, and asks him to wait a little, but the boy follows his intuition and tries to attack his opponent, but he ends up dodging it, and then disarms Pram. Then the judge ends the fight, and gives victory to Percival. And Romantica notes that at least Pram made an effort in the fight, but she still doesn't understand why the boy chose a sword that size. And well, Percival starts to strike Pram, then Desir goes there to break up the fight, and tells Percival that the dispute was over. However, he tells him to shut up and says that he will leave Desir in the same state as Pram, if he continues to bother him, in which Desir suggests that Percival was jealous of the fact that Pram was more talented than him, and upon hearing this, he tries to attack Desir, but he defends himself with his arm, and destroys the boy's sword. And with that, he questions what else Percival wants besides winning the dispute, and then he turns his back and leaves the arena. But before that he threatens Desir, and says he will remember his look. And after everything has been resolved, he breathes a sigh of relief, but the boy questions whether he is injured, and Desir explains that he used magic to block the attack, and that is why he did not suffer major damage. And well, Romantica says that just as she was reckless in the entrance exam, Desir was reckless in getting in the middle of the boys' confrontation, and then Pram finishes the bandage on Desir, and apologizes for putting him through that. However, he says that he got involved in the fight of his own free will, so the boy shouldn't blame himself for anything, but Pram says that because of him, someone from the Alpha class became Desir's enemy, and Romantica says that the boy looks really cute when crying. And Desir asks the girl to control herself a little, and tells Pram that it's fine, and the boy remembers that they haven't introduced themselves yet, and when they do, he asks them to just call him by his first name, and Romantica answers his request at the same time. But Desir calls him Mr. Pram, and then the boy asks him not to be so formal, and when he hears Desir calling him by his first name, Pram blushes, and this leaves Desir a little confused, but the important thing for him is it's just that it made the boy happy. And well, Pram thanks him again for helping him, and says that he will never forget Desir's kindness, so the boy is ready to do anything he wants, if he needs to, and then he says goodbye. And Romantica gets all silly, calling him cute, but Desir reminds her that she wanted to talk to him about something, so the two go to an isolated place, and she questions whether he had told the content of that letter to anyone else. And he says no, but the teachers at that institution know that, after all, that's what made her transfer to the beta class even though she was a very skilled noblewoman, and Desir explains that in the Preleka kingdom, there lived a merchant who made a fortune with his business. And he was a commoner merchant who bought a title from a poor noble, and thus received the surname Eru, and Desir says that this happened when Romantica was about 4 years old, and although they bought a title of nobility, they continue to be treated as commoners, and this includes the teachers at that institution, which is why Romantica was placed in the beta class. And upon hearing this explanation, she says that she already knows all this, and Desir tells her that Romantica should refuse Hadun's offer, as the Blue Moon group is only open to nobles, but the girl disputes this, and says that Hadun certainly will protect her from the other nobles. At this Desir reminds her of the contempt that Hadun has for commoners, and says that if he finds out about this, Romantica has no way of knowing what reaction the boy will have, so the best option would be for her to accept forming a group with Desir, and she asks if he would spread the word that she was a commoner if she refused his offer. And he says that there is no way to form a successful group with blackmailers like him. But upon hearing this, Desir says that he didn't intend to tell on her, and says that if she doesn't agree to join his group, he would have to be content with just having the Pram as your ally. Romantica feels jealous of him because of this, but she says that Desir is still a very suspicious guy. After all, he knows a lot about his family, in addition to having acted very recklessly in the entrance exam. And other than that, Desir was also able to beat a holy knight, and Romantica also remembers that he did an unknown spell called an inversion spell, and says that he shouldn't be able to do something like that while being in the innermost circle. And upon hearing all this scandal, he just smiles and asks her what her response is to his offer, and Romantica finally accepts, and says that she will do her the favor of joining his group. In addition, she says she is willing to discover the secret from him. And then he gives her his hand, to sign the agreement, and the girl complains again about his mocking smile, and says that it continues to bother her. Pram has a dream, where his mother gives him a sword, and says that that object is a proof of love, and she explains that as long as that sword continues to shine, his father will remember them forever. However, when he picks up the sword, it starts to fall apart in his hands, and Pram wakes up from that nightmare screaming, and after that he goes with Desir and Romantica to Professor Bridget's room, so they can make the request to form a group. Then she serves them tea and cookies, and as usual Romantica drools over Pram, and calls him cute for the 1000th time, and then Bridget says that she will pay attention to the main topic of the conversation, and questions why Desir wants to form a group. And he responds that he plans to be promoted to the Alpha class by winning the ranking tournament, so the teacher warns him that it's not easy to do something like that, but Desir says he knows the difficulty he will face. And Pram asks if it really is so difficult to be promoted, and the teacher says yes, and explains that the ranking tournament is a test to determine the rank of students in each class, and it is a tournament conducted with the Alpha and Beta classes together. And Bridget explains that the condition to participate in this tournament is to have a group of 3 to 6 members, and the test works based on a battle between 2 groups. In this the ranking of the winning group increases, and then Romantica questions whether the group that has more members will have an advantage over the others, and Bridget replies no, as each member will be evaluated individually, and the evaluation will take into account the members who contributed most to the group's victory, as the objective of this ranking tournament is to evaluate the different skills of the students, as they will be screened at this stage. and then move on to the qualification rounds. And Bridget explains that the final round takes place in a dark world, and those who qualify in the top 9 receive the title of unique rankers, and upon receiving this title, the student in question is promoted from the beta class to the alpha class, and that's why the ranking tournament is also called promotional tournament. However, Bridget says that so far no one has managed to get promoted, and Romantica says that this is no surprise, as the alpha class has a lot of advantage over the beta class, so she says that this tournament will be a one-sided duel. In this, Bridget agrees with her, and says that in previous tests, the best students were all from the alpha class, and then the teacher reveals that they really won't be able to promote themselves that way, but Desir says that's why it's worth it. The try. At this, Romantica tries to stop him, but he explains that if they manage to promote themselves to the beta class, this will prove the error of the teachers at that institution, and it will be clear that the students in the beta class must also have a decent education, as they are as talented as they are the students of the alpha class. And upon hearing this, Bridget supports the attempt, and says that if they manage to become unique rankers, they will give teachers a good reason to review the corruption in that institution system. And well, to end the conversation, the teacher says that everyone there must be consenting to the formation of the group. So Bridget asks the other two if they still want to join the group, even after having heard everything Desir said. And everyone continues to agree, and after that, the 3 pass through the alpha class training area. Romantica is impressed by this, as she had never seen that giant place in the institution, but Desir explains that that place was only for the alphas, and for them, there was only a small, dirty room left, and upon seeing this, Romantica is disbelieved, and feels that it was just a bad joke, and Pram comments that the place is very different from where the alphas practice. But Desir says that they just need to get used to it and everything will be fine. But a bunch of rats start running at them, leaving Romantica and Pram terrified, so Desir suggests that they clean the room before using it. And Romantica says that she doesn't need that, as she is capable of putting up with a filthy room. Her problem was only with the rats, and then Desir explains that they have no other option. After all, that is the only room that Bridget was able to make available to them. But Romantica remains in denial, and says she won't use that room. However, Desir says that she will cover the holes that the rats pass through, so that she doesn't have to worry anymore, and in the meantime she will be responsible for cleaning, and well, after a while, Pram enters the room again, and the place was completely different from before. And then Desir calls them to start training, but before that Romantica asks to take a shower, but he says he won't do it, as they need to start training soon if they want to become unique rankers. And upon hearing this, Romantica remembers that things weren't going to be easy, and understands that everyone in the alpha class is much stronger than her, so in her head there's no way she can become a unique ranker, but Desir reminds her that she wants to discover his secret, and this gives the necessary motivation for Romantica to agree to form the group with them. As for Pram, he decides to join the group because it will be an excellent opportunity to continue alongside Desir, and with that Bridget approves the formation of their group. But Romantica begins to regret having accepted to join the group, as she is very worn out. But still, she says that she will train, just as Desir asked, in which he prepares training to improve the precision of her magic, and Romantica says that she is already very good at this, as she is able to control several magics at the same time. And then she throws her magic at the circle that Desir made on the wall, but he asks her to try to hit the center of the circle next time, which Romantica tries to counter, and says that she is not capable of doing something like that. However, Desir reminds her that she needs to train, otherwise they won't stand a chance against the alpha class, and then a memory appears in his head, where the girl was fighting bravely in the future. And for Desir, this is more than enough to prove that she is capable of doing what he is asking, and well, he tries to convince her based on anger, and says that if she doesn't want to try to hit the center of the circle, she can be content with just being the cleaner of that room until she graduates. And to make her even angrier, he makes that cynical smile that she loves so much, and well, he makes a circle around her and a circle in front of her, and asks her to put the ball in the other circle, in which Romantica prepares to throw the ball. But Desir says she shouldn't do it that way. After all, she is a wizard. In this case, she would have to manipulate the air current around the ball, and move it to the circle that way, and then she starts to concentrate, and Desir says that wind magic is her strong suit, so the girl she should just do the basics, as she normally does. Then the girl questions what this basic thing would be, and Desir says that she should visualize the wind, and after concentrating a little more, she finally manages to make the ball leave the ground for the first time, and then Romantica throws the ball upwards. With the power of your magic. And upon seeing this, Desir is impressed, because the girl got the hang of the technique the first time, so he asks her to repeat the same exercise a few more times, and the girl is happy that he praised her. Then he calls Pram to train too, and the boy asks if he will teach him fencing techniques, and Desir says no. After all, Pram is already a master swordsman, and for him, the boy is certainly strong enough to win the ranking tournament. However, the boy says that this is not true, and Desir remembers how strong he was in the fight of the future, so with that in mind, he questions why Pram chose the great sword in his fight against Percival. And Desir explains that that wasn't the way Pram used to fight, so his weapon should be lighter, so that he can make more use of his agility, and well, before revealing the reason for this, Pram asks Desir to accompany him to a place. But on the way he shows concern for Romantica's training. But Desir says that it would be better if they don't interrupt her training now, as the girl is having fun with her new ability to levitate things, at which point Pram stops momentarily and asks if he trusts her. And Desir says he trusts them both. Well, they go on their way and Pram reaches his sword, and then he explains a little about his origins, and says that his mother was a commoner while his father was a nobleman, and the only inheritance he left was that sword. And upon seeing it, Desir remembers that this was the same sword that Pram used in the future, so he asks to find out more about the weaponry, and he notices that it is a very light sword, and Pram says that he only found out about it when he was 6 years old, and upon hearing that his father had left him this sword as a gift, Pram decided to begin the path of the sword, so that he could be a respectable son when he met him again. But on a certain day, his mother advised him to never try to see his father, as he lives in a world very different from his, and Pram is saddened by this, but decides to obey his mother. And she tells him that she loves him. Well, he explains to Desir that his mother died without saying his father's name, and upon hearing it, Desir understands that his father was ashamed of the boy and his mother, because of them being commoners. And so if Pram had gone to visit his father, he would certainly have been killed, and that's why his mother never told him who the boy's father was, to protect him. However, he says that he would like to know who his father is. After all, Pram only enrolled at the Hebrean Institute with the intention of looking for him, as he knows that nobles from everywhere attend that institution, and with that Pram imagined that he could obtain information about him. And then Pram asked them to evaluate the sword that his father left, but no one was able to give any important clue to the boy. Quite the contrary, they said that that item had no value whatsoever as a sword, therefore it was not something worthy of a man noble. And this made him very angry, because the love that his father felt for his mother was worth practically nothing, as Pram thought that he had left that sword to him precisely because he loved her, but that sword had no value at all. And then Pram promises that he will never use it again, and well, the next day the boy goes to training with another sword, and Desir is thoughtful about what he heard last afternoon. And meanwhile, Romantica continues training the technique he had given her, and says that she managed to master it completely in just 3 days, but Desir says that she didn't hit the ball inside the circle, so it doesn't count. Well, he goes to the girl and starts staring at her, and she blushes, and he remembers the gift the girl got from Hadun, and then he asks to see Pram's sword again, because he wants to confirm something, but the boy says he can't show it again, as he sold it. And this was another video on the channel. If you liked it and want more videos like this, subscribe and leave a like. See you in the next one.